The morning sun rose over New Haven like it had for the past 15 years, painting the sky in soft orange and pink colors. Jake Morrison stood on his office balcony and watched the city wake up below him. People walked along clean streets, children ran to school with bright smiles, and farmers drove their hover trucks toward the fields outside town. As governor of this human colony on Kepler 442b, Jake felt proud every morning when he saw how far they had come. Bill Henderson was already in his wheat fields before sunrise, checking the plants that would feed thousands of families. His wife Lisa packed lunch for their twin daughters Amy and Katie, who were excited about their science test today. The Henderson farm stretched across green hills that had once been empty dirt. Bill remembered when they first arrived and how hard everyone worked to make this dead planet alive again. Now his wheat grew tall and golden, and his family was happy. In the medical center downtown, Dr. Paul Garcia prepared for another busy day. The hospital served 50,000 colonists spread across 3 cities and dozens of small towns. Most of his patients came for simple checkups or to have babies, which made him smile. A peaceful colony meant healthy people, and healthy people meant the future was bright. His team of 20 doctors and nurses worked in a building that had the best equipment Earth could send across the stars. The fusion reactors that powered New Haven hummed quietly under the ground, watched over by engineer Sam Parker and his crew. Sam loved his job because it kept everyone safe and comfortable. The reactors made electricity for homes, schools, factories, and farms. They also powered the shield that protected the colony from radiation and bad weather. Sam checked every system twice each day because he knew how important his work was for everyone. At the school where Amy and Katie Henderson studied, teacher Carol Johnson taught Earth history to children who had never seen their home planet. She told them about oceans and mountains, about cities with millions of people, and about the long journey their parents made to reach this new world. The children listened with wide eyes, then asked questions about animals and places they could only imagine. Carol made sure they understood they were part of something bigger than just their small colony. The orbital defense platform called USS Guardian floated high above the planet, where Captain Luke Bennett and his crew of 30 kept watch over their home. The station had basic shields and light weapons, enough to stop asteroids or small pirate ships, but nothing too serious. Luke never worried about big threats because New Haven was far from any dangerous places. His job was mostly boring, which was exactly how he liked it. Peaceful colonies needed peaceful guards. Lisa Chang worked as the communications officer on the Guardian, talking to Earth every day through quantum radio. She sent reports about crop harvests, new babies born, and scientific discoveries. Earth always wanted to know how the colony was doing, and Lisa was happy to share good news. The messages took no time to reach Earth, but Earth felt very far away when she looked down at the planet that had become her real home. Down in the colony, historian Marie Davis spent her days writing about everything that happened in New Haven. She recorded births and deaths, new buildings and celebrations, problems solved and dreams achieved. Marie believed their story was important and that future generations would want to know how the first successful human colony grew from nothing into a thriving world. Her library held thousands of books and millions of digital files about their progress. Dr. Helen Brooks studied the plants and animals that lived on Kepler 442b before humans arrived. She found that most creatures were harmless and some were even helpful for farming. Her research station outside the main city was full of samples and data that she shared with scientists on Earth. Helen discovered 3 new species of birds and 2 kinds of useful bacteria. She felt like an explorer finding treasures that could help all of humanity. The colony traded with the Zephyrian Confederation, an alien civilization that lived in nearby star systems. The Zephyrians were peaceful traders who exchanged their advanced materials for Earth's farming knowledge. Ambassador Robert Taylor handled these meetings, which happened every few months when Zephyrian ships visited New Haven. The aliens were friendly and curious about human culture, often asking about Earth's music and art. In the evenings, families gathered in parks and restaurants to enjoy the warm weather and safe streets. Children played games while parents talked about their work and their hopes for the future. Amy and Katie Henderson often joined their friends at the playground near the central square, laughing and running until their mother called them home for dinner. These simple moments made all the hard work worthwhile. The colony celebrated Earth holidays and created new traditions of their own. They held a Founders' Day festival every year to remember the first colonists who arrived with nothing but hope and determination. During the festival, everyone shared food and stories, and children performed plays about their planet's history. The celebration reminded everyone that they were part of something special. At night, when the alien stars shone down on New Haven, people felt safe in their homes. They trusted their leaders, believed in their future, and knew their children would have better lives than they did. The colony was humanity's greatest success story, proof that people could build paradise anywhere if they worked together. Nobody imagined that their peaceful world would soon become the center of a war that would shake the entire galaxy. The Krillian Empire had watched human expansion for 20 years with growing anger. Supreme Admiral Vextar commanded the largest war fleet in this part of the galaxy, and he believed that humans were spreading too fast across worlds that belonged to stronger species. The Krillians had conquered 47 civilizations through fear and overwhelming force, and they saw no reason to treat humanity differently. Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied reports about the human colony on Kepler 442b. The planet held 50,000 humans who had turned dead soil into farms and built cities where nothing existed before. Their success made other species want to copy human methods, which threatened Krillian control over trade and resources. The Admiral decided that New Haven would become an example that would stop human expansion forever. 200 Krillian warships gathered in empty space, far from any inhabited systems. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy cities from orbit and soldiers trained to kill without mercy. The fleet had destroyed colonies before, always leaving just enough survivors to spread word of what happened to those who defied the Empire. Vextar planned the same fate for the humans, never imagining that this attack would lead to his people's destruction, Captain. Luke Bennett was checking routine reports on the USS Guardian when his sensors detected massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. Lisa Chang tried to identify the unknown ships, but their design was unlike anything in human databases. Within minutes, 200 hostile vessels surrounded the small orbital platform, their weapons already charging for attack. Luke activated the emergency beacon that would warn Earth about the danger, then opened communications to the approaching fleet. He identified himself and asked about their intentions, hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding. The only response was a burst of plasma fire that cut through the Guardian's shields like they were made of paper. Luke had just enough time to scream a warning to the colony below, before his station exploded in brilliant white light. Down on New Haven, people looked up at the sky and saw their protectors die. Emergency sirens began wailing across every city as Governor Jake Morrison tried to coordinate evacuation procedures that everyone hoped would never be needed. The colony had shelters built into the ground, designed to protect people from radiation storms and equipment failures. Nobody had imagined they would need protection from an alien invasion. Bill Henderson was working in his fields when the first orbital bombardment began. Streams of energy fell from the sky like deadly rain, targeting schools, hospitals, and government buildings. Bill saw his farmhouse explode in flames and ran toward it, screaming for his wife and daughters. Lisa Henderson had just enough time to grab Amy and Katie and drag them toward the underground shelter behind their home. The house collapsed on top of Bill before he could reach his family. Burning wood and metal buried him as he tried to crawl toward the shelter entrance. His last thoughts were of his daughters' faces and the hope that they would somehow survive this nightmare. Lisa heard his final cries through the shelter's thick walls but could not help him without exposing her children to the death. Falling from above, Dr. Paul Garcia stayed at his hospital. Even as energy beams destroyed most of the building around him, he and his staff tried to move patients to underground areas. But there was no time and nowhere safe to go. The doctor died while carrying a young child toward an emergency exit that no longer existed. His sacrifice saved 3 people but cost him everything. Sam Parker worked frantically at the fusion reactor controls, trying to maintain power for the emergency shelters and communication systems. He managed to send one final message to Earth before Krillian fire turned the reactor facility into radioactive ruins. His message contained technical data about the attacking ships and a desperate plea for someone to remember what happened to New Haven. Krillian troop transports landed among the burning ruins of human cities, discharging thousands of soldiers in heavy armor. These warriors had orders to hunt down any surviving humans and make their deaths as visible as possible. They moved through collapsed buildings and underground tunnels, using sensors to find people hiding in shelters and emergency bunkers. Marie, Davis used her final minutes to upload every file in the colony's historical database to a hidden memory core that might survive the destruction. She wanted future generations to know what New Haven had been before the Krillians came, to understand what was lost when peace turned to war. The historian died at her computer, killed by soldiers who never understood the value of the knowledge they destroyed. Dr. Helen Brooks was at her research station when alien troops surrounded the building. She tried to surrender, holding up her hands and speaking words of peace in several languages. The Krillians shot her anyway because they had no interest in prisoners. Her decades of research burned with her body, taking discoveries that might have helped many worlds. The massacre continued for 3 days as Krillian soldiers systematically eliminated every human settlement on New Haven. They destroyed farms and factories, schools and libraries, everything that people had built during 15 years of hard work. The aliens recorded the destruction and broadcast it across nearby star systems as a warning to other species about the price of rapid expansion. Lisa Henderson held her daughters in the underground shelter as explosions shook the ground above them. Amy and Katie cried for their father, but Lisa could only whisper that everything would be okay, even though she knew it was a lie. Other families crowded into the small space, listening to the sounds of their world dying around them. When the killing finally stopped, fewer than 300 humans remained alive out of 50,000. The Krillians left them deliberately, knowing that survivors would carry word of what happened to other human colonies. Vextar wanted every human in the galaxy to know that their expansion was over, and that further attempts at colonization would result in complete extinction. The alien fleet departed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving behind a world of ash and death. The survivors emerged from their shelters to find their paradise transformed into a graveyard. Nothing moved in the ruins except smoke rising from countless fires, and the only sounds were the cries of children calling for parents who would never answer. Admiral Patricia Stone noticed the silence first. For 15 years, New Haven had sent daily reports through quantum communications, sharing news about crops and weather, births and celebrations, problems solved and dreams achieved. When 3 weeks passed without any messages, she knew something terrible had happened to humanity's most successful colony. The exploration vessel UES Columbus launched from Earth orbit under Captain Ryan Kelly's command. The ship carried a crew of 60 specialists trained for rescue operations and first contact situations. Nobody expected to find anything worse than equipment failure or natural disaster. As the Columbus traveled through hyperspace toward Kepler 442b, the crew prepared medical supplies and communication equipment to help whatever emergency they might discover. Sensor Officer Tracy Mitchell was the first to detect the radiation signatures that marked New Haven's grave. Her instruments showed massive energy weapon impacts across the planet's surface, the kind of destruction that could only come from orbital bombardment. Captain Kelly ordered red alert as the ship approached what had once been a thriving human world. The planet below them was unrecognizable. Where green cities had stood among golden farmland, only blackened craters remained. The orbital defense platform was gone, reduced to scattered metal floating in space. Atmospheric readings showed radioactive contamination from destroyed fusion reactors, and thermal scans revealed no major sources of heat or power anywhere on the surface. Security Chief Mike Rodriguez led the first landing party to what had been New Haven's capital city. His team found ruins so complete that they could barely identify where buildings had stood. Bodies lay buried under collapsed structures, and the few remains they could recover showed evidence of energy weapon burns. Rodriguez had served in colonial security for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for destruction this thorough. Dr. Susan Wright, the ship's psychologist, detected life signs coming from underground areas near the ruins of residential districts. The landing teams found hidden emergency shelters where a few hundred humans had survived the massacre. These people emerged blinking into daylight, their faces showing the trauma of watching their world die around them. Lisa Henderson was among the survivors, still protecting Amy and Katie 3 weeks after losing everything they had ever known. The twins had not spoken since watching their home explode, and they clung to their mother with desperate fear. Dr. Wright recognized the signs of severe psychological shock in most of the survivors, especially the children who had witnessed horrors no young mind should ever see. Medical Officer Dr. Nathan Pierce worked around the clock treating radiation sickness, malnutrition, and injuries that had festered without proper care. Many survivors were dying slowly from exposure to contaminated air and water. The Columbus's medical bay became a refugee camp as the crew tried to save lives that were slipping away despite their best efforts. The survivors told their stories in broken voices, describing the alien fleet that appeared without warning and the systematic destruction that followed. They spoke of friends and family members killed while trying to help others, of buildings collapsing and fires that burned for days. Their testimony painted a picture of calculated genocide designed to terrorize other human colonies. Captain Kelly compiled detailed reports of everything his team discovered, including recordings of survivor interviews and extensive documentation of the destruction. The evidence clearly showed that New Haven had been targeted for complete elimination by an advanced alien civilization with overwhelming military superiority. This was not a random attack but a deliberate act of war against humanity. The Columbus carried its precious cargo of survivors back to Earth, where Admiral Stone waited with growing dread. She had hoped for good news about equipment problems or communication failures. Instead, she received proof that humanity faced an enemy capable of destroying entire colonies without suffering any losses in return. The ship's arrival at Earth triggered the largest crisis in human history. President Amanda Foster called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council as Admiral Stone's report reached every major government on the planet. The images and testimony from New Haven's survivors spread across news networks, showing billions of people the fate that awaited human expansion into space. Memorial services began in every major city as the names of New Haven's dead were read aloud in continuous broadcasts. The reading took 3 full days because 50,000 names was more than most people could comprehend. Children who had never seen the colony wept for other children who had died among distant stars, while adults struggled to understand how such evil could exist in the universe. Defense Minister Charles Roberts called for immediate military mobilization, arguing that humanity needed to prepare for war against an enemy that showed no mercy. Secretary of State Nicole Johnson attempted diplomatic contact with alien civilizations that might know about the attackers, hoping to find peaceful solutions to prevent future massacres. The Krillian Empire's response to diplomatic inquiries was a simple message broadcast across multiple star systems. They identified themselves as the force that destroyed New Haven and stated that human expansion would no longer be tolerated. Any attempt to establish new colonies would result in the complete extinction of the human species. There would be no negotiations and no second chances. Amy and Katie Henderson received treatment at a specialized facility for traumatized children, but they remained silent and withdrawn. Dr. Wright worked with dozens of young survivors who had seen their parents die and their homes destroyed. The psychological damage would take years to heal, if it could be healed at all. President Foster addressed the world from the United Nations building, speaking to 8 billion people who demanded justice for the innocent dead. She announced that diplomatic efforts had failed, and that the Global Defense Council had voted unanimously for military action. Earth would not accept the destruction of New Haven or threats against future human expansion. Admiral Stone received promotion to Supreme Fleet Commander with unlimited authority to prosecute humanity's response to the New Haven massacre. The normally peaceful Earth began the largest military mobilization in human history as factories shifted from civilian production to weapons manufacturing. Research facilities started developing new technologies designed specifically for war against advanced alien civilizations. The survivors of New Haven were given homes and support, but nothing could replace what they had lost. Lisa Henderson watched her daughters slowly begin to speak again, while she testified before military planners about Krillian tactics and capabilities. Her detailed descriptions of the enemy helped Earth strategists understand what they faced and how to fight. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their willingness to follow enemies to the ends of the universe when innocent people were murdered. The Krillians had awakened something in human nature that would not rest until justice was done, no matter what the cost. Earth transformed overnight from a peaceful world into the center of the largest military buildup in human history. Dr. Benjamin Clark, the planet's leading physicist, received orders to develop weapons that could match or exceed anything the Krillian Empire possessed. His laboratory expanded from a small research facility into a massive complex, employing thousands of scientists working around the clock on Project Nemesis. The project's goals went far beyond conventional weapons. Dr. Clark and his team studied the energy signatures left by Krillian bombardment of New Haven, reverse engineering alien technology from blast patterns and radiation readings. They discovered that Krillian ships used plasma-based weapons powered by fusion cores, but human quantum physics suggested ways to create far more destructive alternatives. Engineer Carol Turner led the design teams that turned theoretical weapons into practical warships. Her shipyards in Earth orbit expanded rapidly as new construction platforms assembled around the planet. What had once been peaceful space stations became factories producing vessels designed for one purpose: destroying every Krillian ship and base in the galaxy. The United Earth fleet grew from 200 exploration and patrol vessels to over 3,000 warships in 8 months. Each new ship incorporated lessons learned from New Haven's destruction and technologies that pushed human engineering to its limits. The flagship UES Humanity's Wrath alone carried more firepower than the entire pre-war fleet combined. Admiral Stone personally commanded the fleet's development from her headquarters on Luna Base, coordinating with colonial defense forces across human space. Every human settlement received new weapons and trained militia forces, ensuring that no colony would ever again face destruction without fighting back. The scattered human worlds became armed camps preparing for war. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded the fleet's vanguard aboard the UES Vengeance, leading a squadron of the most advanced warships humanity had ever built. Her crew included veterans like Tactical Officer Commander Frank Miller, who had studied Krillian battle tactics until he could predict their movements better than they could themselves. Navigation Specialist Lieutenant Commander Rachel Green calculated hyperspace routes that would bring human fleets to enemy positions without warning. Intelligence Operative Jason Hayes infiltrated alien trading posts and diplomatic facilities, gathering information about Krillian military capabilities and the location of their homeworlds. His network of human agents and sympathetic aliens mapped enemy territory with precision that would have been impossible through conventional reconnaissance. Hayes discovered that the Krillian Empire controlled 12 star systems with heavily fortified worlds, containing billions of civilians. The most important intelligence came from a captured Krillian communication probe that revealed the location of Veltar, the Empire's capital system. This heavily defended star cluster contained 4 inhabited planets, massive orbital battle stations, and the largest concentration of enemy warships in the galaxy. Supreme Admiral Vextar commanded the system's defenses from a fortress that had never been successfully attacked. Dr. Clark's team achieved their greatest breakthrough when they successfully tested a stellar manipulation device capable of destabilizing main sequence stars. The weapon required enormous amounts of energy and careful positioning, but it could destroy entire star systems by causing their suns to collapse or explode. The test, conducted in an uninhabited system, created a supernova visible from neighboring star clusters. Earth's battle plan, designated Operation Righteous Fury, involved more than simple military victory. The human leadership had decided that the Krillian Empire needed to be completely eliminated to prevent future attacks on human colonies. This meant destroying not just their military forces but their entire civilization, including civilian populations that had supported genocide against New Haven. President Foster struggled with the moral implications of such total warfare, but the images of dead children on New Haven convinced her that some enemies could never be allowed to threaten innocent people again. The Global Defense Council voted unanimously to authorize the use of any weapons necessary to ensure that the Krillian Empire would never again have the capability to harm human colonies. The Mother Fleet's crew came from every human world, including many volunteers who had lost family members at New Haven. Lisa Henderson joined the Civilian Advisory Board, helping military planners understand the psychological impact of Krillian tactics on survivors. Her daughters Amy and Katie had slowly begun to recover, but they still woke up screaming from nightmares about burning buildings and alien soldiers. Weapons testing continued, as human scientists perfected quantum torpedoes that could penetrate any known shield technology. These projectiles existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to intercept or deflect. A single quantum torpedo could destroy a Krillian battleship, while larger versions could crack planets or trigger volcanic eruptions across entire continents. The shipyard workers labored in shifts around the clock, knowing that every day of delay meant more time for the Krillians to prepare their defenses or attack other human colonies. The UES Retribution launched 3 weeks ahead of schedule, its crew volunteering to test untried systems in their eagerness to bring justice to New Haven's killers. Training exercises took place in empty star systems where human crews practiced coordinated attacks against simulated Krillian formations. The exercises revealed that human tactics would need to rely on superior technology rather than numerical advantage, since the enemy possessed more ships and had centuries of experience in galactic warfare. Captain Alex Morrison, brother of New Haven's dead governor, commanded the assault carrier UES Nemesis that would deploy Dr. Clark's stellar destruction device. His ship carried the most advanced shields and weapons in the human fleet, but its real purpose was to survive long enough to position the ultimate weapon where it could do maximum damage to enemy star systems. The psychological preparation proved as important as the technical aspects. Military chaplains worked with crews who struggled to accept that they were planning genocide against an entire alien civilization. The survivors' testimony helped resolve these doubts, as soldiers remembered that the Krillians had shown no mercy to human children and deserved none in return. Admiral Stone finalized the attack plan from her command center, studying three-dimensional maps of Krillian space and calculating the optimal sequence of strikes. The human fleet would hit multiple targets simultaneously, preventing enemy forces from concentrating their defenses or escaping to fight another day. Every Krillian military asset would be destroyed within 72 hours. The final weapon tests confirmed that human technology now exceeded Krillian capabilities in every important category. Quantum shields could absorb plasma bombardment indefinitely, while human weapons could penetrate any defense the enemy possessed. The massacre at New Haven had awakened human ingenuity and directed it toward purposes that would horrify the aliens who had thought humanity was weak. As the Great Fleet prepared for departure, Earth's population held vigils for the soldiers who might not return and the enemy civilians who would certainly die. The moral weight of planned genocide troubled many humans, but the memory of 50,000 innocents killed without warning or mercy steeled their resolve to see justice done regardless of the cost. The United Earth Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Veltar system in perfect formation. 3,000 warships arranged in attack groups that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Humanity's Wrath and looked at the enemy homeworld that would soon cease to exist. Her crew had trained for this moment during 8 months of preparation, and every human ship carried weapons designed specifically to destroy Krillian civilization. The enemy response came immediately, as warning sirens echoed across Krillian command centers throughout the system. Supreme Admiral Vextar had been expecting human retaliation eventually, but the size and technological sophistication of the attacking fleet exceeded his worst fears. 800 Krillian warships, launched from orbital bases while planetary defense systems powered up weapons that could destroy asteroids and small moons. Admiral Stone opened communications on all frequencies, broadcasting her message to every Krillian receiver in the system. Her words were calm and final, spoken by a woman who had already decided the fate of billions. She identified herself as the commander of humanity's response to New Haven and gave the enemy 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation. The Krillian reply came in the form of plasma bombardment aimed at the human flagship. Vextar had built his career on intimidating weaker species through overwhelming displays of force, and he could not comprehend that humanity possessed weapons capable of destroying his entire civilization. His attack marked the beginning of a battle that would reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. Captain Elena Rodriguez led the vanguard assault against the outer defense platforms that protected Veltar's approaches. Her squadron of advanced destroyers moved through Krillian fire like deadly dancers, their quantum shields absorbing energy that would have vaporized older human ships. The UES Vengeance fired its first quantum torpedo at a battle station the size of a small city, watching the target simply disappear in a flash of impossible light. Main battle raged across the entire star system as human ships systematically dismantled Krillian positions with weapons that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Traditional plasma beams struck quantum shields and simply vanished, while human return fire passed through Krillian defenses as if they did not exist. The technological gap between the two civilizations had reversed completely since New Haven's destruction. Commander Frank Miller coordinated tactical strikes from his position aboard the UES Vengeance, directing torpedo attacks against enemy command ships with surgical precision. His studies of Krillian battle doctrine allowed him to predict their movements and counter their strategies before they could be implemented. Every enemy formation that tried to concentrate its fire found itself surrounded and destroyed by human forces that moved faster and hit harder than anything the Krillians had ever faced. The Krillian home fleet fought with desperate courage as they realized their military superiority had become a deadly disadvantage. Ships that had terrorized dozens of alien civilizations exploded under quantum bombardment, their crews dying without understanding how human technology had advanced so rapidly. Vextar's flagship held out longer than most, but even his personal shields could not stop weapons that existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, Captain Alex Morrison commanded the UES Nemesis as it fought its way through the inner system toward Veltar's sun. His ship carried Dr. Clark's stellar manipulation device, the ultimate weapon that would ensure the Krillian Empire could never threaten human colonies again. The Nemesis absorbed tremendous damage while pushing through enemy defenses, its crew knowing that their sacrifice would prevent future genocides. Dr. Benjamin Clark monitored the stellar weapon's deployment from Earth, watching as his creation prepared to demonstrate the true cost of murdering human children. The device required 6 hours to destabilize a main sequence star, during which time the human fleet would need to maintain position against increasingly desperate Krillian counterattacks. Every minute that passed brought them closer to delivering justice for New Haven's dead. The battle continued for 18 hours as human ships eliminated Krillian positions throughout the system. Orbital factories that had built warships for centuries became clouds of radioactive debris, while planetary defense installations vanished under quantum bombardment that left only crater fields behind. The proud Krillian military discovered what it meant to be helpless against superior technology. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Green calculated precise hyperspace coordinates that would allow human ships to escape the coming stellar explosion. Her navigation systems tracked the movements of 3,000 vessels, while plotting safe routes through space that would soon become uninhabitable. The fleet's survival depended on her ability to coordinate the largest military withdrawal in human history. The Krillian civilian population watched their military collapse with growing terror as reports reached them of human weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Billions of people who had supported their government's aggressive expansion policies now faced extinction because their leaders had underestimated human determination. Their pleas for mercy went unanswered, because humanity remembered that no mercy had been shown to New Haven's children. Admiral Stone authorized activation of the stellar weapon as the last Krillian military assets fell to human fire. The device began its work on Veltar's sun, introducing quantum instabilities that would cascade into total stellar collapse within hours. The process was irreversible once started, ensuring that even if the human fleet was somehow destroyed, the Krillian homeworld would still die. Captain Morrison's crew aboard the Nemesis watched their instruments as the star began to show signs of increasing instability. Solar flares erupted from the surface with growing intensity, while gravitational fluctuations indicated that core fusion reactions were becoming chaotic. The weapon was working exactly as designed, building toward a climax that would be visible across multiple star systems. The human fleet began its withdrawal as Veltar's sun entered the final stages of collapse. Ships that had fought for 18 hours against desperate enemies now raced toward hyperspace jump points that would carry them to safety. The crews watched their sensors as 4 planets and dozens of moons fell toward a star that could no longer maintain stable fusion reactions. The stellar explosion that consumed Veltar exceeded all theoretical predictions, creating a supernova that outshone entire galaxies for several seconds. 4 worlds with billions of inhabitants vanished instantly, along with every Krillian military installation and industrial facility in the system. The destruction was so complete that even the asteroid belts were scattered across interstellar space by the blast wave. Admiral Stone transmitted her final message to the galaxy from a safe distance outside the expanding shell of stellar debris. Her words carried to every known civilization explaining that this was humanity's answer to the massacre at New Haven. She warned that any species that harmed human colonies would face similar destruction, regardless of their military strength or political influence. The shockwave from Veltar's destruction reached neighboring star systems within days, carrying news of humanity's terrible revenge to civilizations that had considered humans a minor threat. The surviving Krillian colonies immediately sued for peace, offering complete surrender and reparations for their crimes. Other aggressive species reconsidered their expansion plans after learning what had happened to the galaxy's former dominant military power. Few survivors of New Haven attended memorial services on Earth for both the human dead and the billions of Krillians who had died in retaliation. Lisa Henderson spoke at the ceremony, holding her daughters close while acknowledging the terrible cost of the justice they had received. She said that revenge could never bring back the dead, but sometimes it was necessary to prevent future atrocities. Amy and Katie Henderson had slowly recovered from their trauma, but they would never forget watching their father die to protect them. They grew up knowing that their survival had cost an entire alien civilization, and they dedicated their lives to preventing such tragedies through diplomacy and understanding between species. Humanity resumed its expansion among the stars, but now every colony ship traveled with warship escorts and every settlement maintained planetary defense systems. The galaxy had learned that humans preferred peace but possessed weapons that could shatter stars when their innocent were murdered. No alien civilization would ever again mistake human kindness for weakness or believe that genocide could be committed without consequences that would echo across the cosmos for generations.